Hey everybody, this is Elliot Fishman, and
Reed Jobs, how you guys doing?
so we're supposed to talk about CT of the stomach, but we're going to do that next time. It's Reed just happened to drop by, and I figured, my God, this is what an opportunity. Reed, how's it going?
It's going great, Elliot. It's wonderful to be back with you.
It's an honor for us. So let me ask a simple question and let you do all the talking. So I know you're traveling, looking at incredible things. What's really of interest to you today? What do you see that's incredible in medicine?
Oh, boy, starting with the easy questions I see.
Right.
What's exciting in medicine? So we're seeing everything really accelerating recently, especially in the areas of immunotherapy, of genetic engineering, and in early detection of cancer. So what's really great about all these things is that they've all kind of progressed from us understanding the principles to us now being able to deploy those in new therapies and testing it and seeing it in people, which is so cool. And a lot of these are working. So on the one hand, we're seeing with immunotherapy, and this is, where you take your body's immune system and reprogram it and make it fight cancer in a much more effective fashion, that we can now see evidence that this is working in solid tumors, which before has been totally elusive. It's been incredible working in hematological cancers, but moving from leukemia, say, to a solid tumor environment has been really tricky because there's a lot of acidity. It's just completely different. It's much more heterogeneous. It's much more difficult. But now we really understand a lot of the principles behind how the immune system works and doesn't work around cancer. We can basically get over those hurdles, and now that's really working a lot better. So that's been really something that's been fantastic to see. The second thing is in genetic engineering. And this is just, a lot of people get a little nervous about this, and they should, but these are incredibly powerful tools that we have right now. And we're getting a lot smarter when we can target. For instance, we can target now the epigenome, which is a regulator for the whole genetic system, and can be a lot more effective than just trying to hit genes, where you can honestly have a lot more off-target effects because we're not as precise as we need to be. But epigenetics can be a solution to that. So those are two things that I'm really excited about right now.
So when you're looking, I know you have a sort of a global perspective. Is most of the things you're seeing are in the U.S. or is sort of a worldwide phenomenon?
It's absolutely a worldwide phenomenon. Because I am very proud to be an American and I focus most of my energy here, and we have the best universities, I spend most of my time here. So, I split it between working on grants and working in investments, really just because I think you're investing in the same product development pipeline, whether you're doing it philanthropically early in a lab or later on in a company, because ultimately those are the same technologies that you want to get into people.
So one thing I left out is, so some people may not know you. Why don't you give us your title, where you're at, what company you work for?
Oh, I work for it's called Emerson Collective. It's a family office in Palo Alto, and it actually does an incredible amount of work all across a lot of fields. It started historically in the education space, and that started with something called College Track, which is a really great program that I know you know of, which helps underprivileged kids get the tools that they need to get college prep and then to get qualified for four-year colleges. And through that, we actually learned that many of the students who we were interacting with were, in fact, DACA recipients and had come here as children. And so we actually got involved with that program quite a bit. So those have been, immigration reform and education have been two of the areas that we've really focused on the most historically. And one of the newest things we've been doing now is working in the cancer space, and that's what I'm leading in our health team.
And you mentioned that you support research and everything, and the academics. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well,
I know you're very humble about it, but
well, it's that I am humble about it, and we like to remain anonymous because we really just like our work to speak for itself. But this is not like about an ego trip or any kind of thing like that. But no, because I don't want it to be about me, we actually have competitively deployed grant programs that are independently reviewed at over a dozen academic centers.
It was terrific. And then I know a lot of the CTisus users know about this because we've had it on the website and we talk about it, which is Count Me In.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Camions is a terrific program that we started a few years ago with the Broad Institute and Dana-Farber. And the idea here is just that if I were a cancer patient, I would want to know, and if I were a researcher, I'd want to know, what happened to other people who have these same genetic mutations and what were their results. And the reason that sort of database doesn't exist is because the pieces of what happened to other people and what did they take are ensconced in medical records. And those are mostly held by hospitals and doctors. And, you know, the thing about that is that it's actually your record. And legally, this has all been sorted out under HIPAA, but it's not really practiced. You know, like most places don't give you your medical record as you leave. You don't seem to have a whole lot of ownership towards it. It's only really in retrospect that you think, oh boy, gee, I wish I had my medical record. So we've decided to try to make this a lot easier for cancer patients. And we built a lot of software that can allow them to share their medical record, their tissue sample, and their tumor sample with researchers at the Broad who can sequence it. And we've actually now done this in a remote way, so people can do this from all over the country. And we've only piloted this in a few cancers, so it's not ready for prime time. It's not ready for everybody because the sequencing is still pretty expensive. But the incredible thing is that we can get medical records and clinical data out of patients from community hospitals. So you don't have to be in, like, you know, an MIT or, you know, Harvard or any kind of big hospital system. You can actually be anywhere. And as a patient, you really have to do very little. You just have to sign an online consent, and you have to get probably spit in a tube, like a 23andMe type of thing, to give us your germline. But then we take care of the sample collection and the clinical record abstraction on our own. And I mean, the system we're engaging with is, it's profoundly anachronistic from my point of view, because the majority of the records we receive are actually through faxes, and they're paper records. Like, I didn't think we needed a fax machine anymore, but we do. So that's actually been sort of like a big learning curve for us in terms of how to be really smart about and efficient about getting these records in a digital format. But the fantastic thing is that when we've looked at this for rare cancers and try to recruit patients, usually actually using social media, because that's where a lot of them are aggregating naturally, it turns out that there are so many experiments being done that some things are actually working, and you have these extreme survivors. And oftentimes, if you can look at the genetic basis there is a signal. For instance, we found this with angiosarcoma, which is a rare cancer. And there's a few ways in that it occurs in the scalp. And some researchers in community hospitals, and I think it was Florida and Arizona independently, tried an immunotherapy because it has a better signature with UV-related cancers. And those patients are in remission. And that was never shared. And we now were the first ones to really kind of see this pattern. And of course, we published it, and now there's a new clinical guideline for that type of angiosarcoma. And, you know, for the cancers in the US, there's a long tail of about 25%, which are classified as rare, which I think means under 3,000 diagnoses per year. But for most of those, there ain't a standard of care because they're really hard to study, because how can you get that many patients in one hospital? But if you actually do this remotely, we can do this.
And so when you collect the data, what's the goal? What are you going to do with the data?
The goal is to anonymize it and to share it with as many people as we possibly can, because we care a lot about people's privacy, but we also want to make sure that the right people, researchers, can access it. And to make sure that happens, we have them go through an institutional review board so that their institutions can make sure that what they're asking for is really scientifically valid.
And that's great, because I think, you know, one of the things, was just an article, I think, unfortunate about this, that there's a data set from Brigham and Women's that a lot of people use, but of course, that's a data set. So if everyone uses the same data set and it's a limited population, you can come up with the wrong conclusions.
You sure can.
Right. So like the work, I know you did breast cancer originally, but the fact that I remember seeing a map at one of your presentations, it's not like we did breast cancer at Hopkins, we'd have a big cluster in Baltimore, which maybe there's some bias for different reasons, but the way you had it, it was 50 states, it was from small cities and big cities, and so it really has a much broader look at the disease and not potentially bias you, though it's an unintentional bias, but it's, you know, it's a much better population.
We can see that. So I don't want to claim to be anything that we're not, and we do not have perfect ethnic proportionality yet, which is something that I care about a lot and that we're focusing quite a bit on. We do, though, have demographic proportionality, meaning that we see people equally in proportion to where if they live either in cities or in rural areas, which is really cool. I mean, that to me was a big surprise, because it's not, like you're saying, it's not the super plugged in, technologically literate patients who we're seeing. It's everyone who is just curious, which is really fantastic, because that means we can, like you said, see true signal and actually help the most people.
So that's great. And the fact, like I say, the fact you're getting things by fax, which all of us looking to end the fax, but you know, most doctors' offices, little doctors' offices, they can't get rid of the fax. It's still it's still the #1 communication method in medicine, although we kind of all joke about it. Nobody can remember the fax number, but it still is number one.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, in your travels and in your thinking about AI, what's your feeling, whether it's in radiology, we're biased to radiology, but you don't need to be biased, medical, drug discovery, treatment, how do you see AI playing out?
Well, everything you do is fantastic and just perfect.
Right, so we'll get rid of that.
Okay. Oh, we're
everyone watches that. Forget that. Forget that.
So, like you were just saying, one of the biggest concerns that people need to have about AI is, what is the training data set? What is this learning off of? And is the data this is learning off of accurate? Is it representative, and is it accurate? And for AI, especially in radiology, that's really going to matter, because not only are you going to have people who have different kinds of backgrounds and different kinds of treatment paths, but you're even going to have people who have different kinds of anatomy, because that happens all the time. You know this better than anybody. So I think as long as you have a data set that you can mathematically prove is going to be absolutely proportional and accurate for the vast majority of people, and as well be able to evolve if it sees any abnormalities and not make any kind of jump to any conclusions, then you're probably going to be pretty well off. And before I finish, I want to say right now it's imperative that we pair that with a human reader and not just excise the radiologist, because that would be the end of the world.
Maybe, but I as a radiologist think I think it's surely, we talk about this, it's really going to change how we practice.
It must.
But of course, the truth is, I've been in practice a while. When CT came along, was a major change in MR. So I think radiology has been really good about looking at change. And the most exciting thing is to be in a field that is changing. You don't want to be in a field that's not changing. I think the question is, how are we going to adapt? I think different parts of radiology are going to have to adapt differently. If the computer, we're doing, like I said, the Felix, if the computer can pick up pancreatic cancer better than any of us, we should use the computer.
Yeah, of course.
There's other things you'll need to use us for, and surely our job will change. And just even the pathologist and everybody else, just the changes. And you grew up in Silicon Valley and you live there, and that must be very exciting, because that is, I always tell people that as you said, there are a lot of smart people all over the world, and with AI in medicine, when you look at the articles, if I look at 10 articles, there's one from the US, there's one from Stanford, there's one from China, there's one from South Korea, there's one from Israel. So AI is a world phenomenon. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt. But I always think that 1,000 years from now, when we look at history, we talk about Rome and we talk about places like that, Jerusalem, where things were at one point in time. And I think 1,000 millennial from now, or whatever, that's how they're going to look at Silicon Valley, that it was this unique thing, and you can argue why it came together, whether it was just some articles, particularly after Apollo, the 50-year anniversary of the moon landing, how it was really that drove the development in Silicon Valley, and how people never think of it that way. There was really the U.S. finances would do the space program.
No, absolutely, and the Defense Department going back to the Second World War. Absolutely, right. That's what set up a lot of the industrial base in the Bay Area,
which is somewhat I guess it always comes down also as things don't go as planned. You couldn't have planned it so well if you tried, right?
Well,
you get critical mass together.
The story of Silicon Valley is a story of change, and I'm really grateful that the final chapters in that story are still being written, and it actually has been a little heartbreaking in the last decade or so to see some companies in Silicon Valley lose a bit of their way and lose a bit of the public's trust, rightfully so. And I think it's actually incumbent on those of us who understand the Valley and understand what people they're really trying to achieve, to win that back, and to bring back what we can show the world that we can do, in a way that is really unequivocally good and helps the most people, because ultimately that's what we're designed to do.
Well, let me follow up on that question. So I always tell people in Baltimore that when I visit you, or I go to visit some companies in Pixar and everything, that I would always come back with a different attitude, and I'd feel like 20 or 30% smarter. It would only last about a week, so it wasn't like a permanent transfusion or anything, unfortunately. But in your mind, now you've traveled, but you live there. What makes it so special? You can't say it's all the same. There's something special about that area. You could say it's the air, the water, the temperature. What is it that makes it special? You went to school there. What is it?
There's no magic answer, Elliot. If it were that easy, people would, you know,
No, I'm not saying
be
you
able to copy it.
I'm not saying you copy it, but why? I mean, what is it that makes, you know, is it just the way people interact? Is it the openness? You know, like I always like to say that if I said that this mouse could fly, okay, my job is to make it go across the room, fly across the room. If I asked in Baltimore, people would say that's impossible. Don't waste your time. You're an idiot. If I was in Palo Alto and I said, they go, okay, we need 6 months and 12 people, and I'll do it.
All right. For that, if you want to look at it that way, then there's two things that I'd say are really, really special about it. One is just the culture of not asking about boundaries and only thinking about what would it take to get there. And the other thing that we have is really the best engineers on the planet. Because when you couple together the desire to kind of push boundaries and see beyond what a lot of people kind of see as being the outer limits, as well as the capacity to actually go there if you wanted to, then I think you have the potential to achieve almost anything that you want. And that's really special. And I think that that mindset is something that anyone can have. And the engineering expertise is something that does take a lot of investment, obviously, and takes a lot of time and is most powerful when it's really concentrated like it is in the Valley, which is why it's really so powerful. A lot of it has to do with our incredible universities. A lot of that's been built up over several generations. But I think that's just, if you look at it, it's the marriage of those two things that allows us to kind of try to go further. And it's that impulse to go further, like almost like a drive, like an explorer, that I think is never going to go away.
No, it is something special. And it's really, I think you almost, I mean, you said incredibly well, but it's almost like being an outsider makes it so much more obvious. I think when you grow up with all that around you, it's like it's taken for granted. A little, I don't mean that in a bad way.
No.
But I mean, it's like, you know, I'm sure, you know, it started when you were in first grade. That, you know, there was a certain way people behave, people think, you know, and you know, I would say myself, the little bit of success I had was because when I went to elementary school, they were very tough and they argued with you. When I went to school, you know, now people are politically correct. In my school, I went to Hebrew school, like whatever you said, they would say you're wrong. Because it was you know, it's just like, because they wanted you to explain why you were saying what you were saying. I mean,
no, it's,
you know, and you can argue
very
and say, well,
Socratic.
yeah, but it works because you know, for the rest of your life, you're always at least thinking, well, you know, so the fact that someone would say, Fishman, you're an idiot when you're 9 years old. So when you're 39 and they say it, it's not so bad. You heard it, okay? The 30 years is like, you know.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I can take it. Yeah.
You know, when you're 9 years old, and then it doesn't bother you when you're 9. It's not going to bother you when you're 39 or whatever else, age. So what else? So you didn't, on personal notes. So you running any marathons lately, or any marathons coming up?
New York is coming up in about a month and a half.
Okay.
And I'm actually doing Boston this year, which is going to be terrific.
Really? Oh, it was like in March, right?
April, I think. It's in
okay.
April. Yeah.
No, it's in the. That's great. And so you're running the Brooklyn or New York marathon.
New York.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. All 5 boroughs. It's going to be terrific. It's my first time.
Yeah, my daughter used to run that. I don't think she's doing it. They used to do.
Well,
that.
I think there's like 70,000 people. I mean, it is huge. And,
yeah, but the number, if they have 70,000, there's another 70 who want to run, because you have to make. You know, you went through it. You have to fill out those forms and stuff.
Sure.
And I remember it used to be, before the problems in Boston, I used to go to the gate, because you can walk with you know, it's 6 o'clock in the morning it starts. So I walk to the gate, but now you can't get into Central Park.
No. There's like a good amount of security, and that's totally appropriate.
That's great. So if I asked you, this is what's your best time in a marathon?
All right. Honestly, it was my first marathon, which tells you something, that I've just gone downhill since then.
A little busy.
But no, my best time was 3:08 in San Francisco, and that was the first one I did. You know, I say that they've changed the course, and now there's these extra hills which make that time impossible for me. But I think I'm just you know, dissipating and getting a little older.
And what's the best marathon you've ever been in, from a visualization point of view?
You know, my favorite one that I've done is actually Portland, and the reason for that is because in Portland they have these local bands that perform every half mile. And you realize when you're running, like, it's just some random Sunday at like 6 a.m. and all these people are out playing music. And the great thing is, it's every kind of music you can think of. You know, it's a high school marching band, it's a rock band, it's, you know, a guy playing a sitar, and then it's, like a string quartet and a 3 horns, and it's fantastic. They have every kind of music possible. It's great.
It sounds like Portland, right?
It's pure Portland, but it was really sweet. I thought it was a great spirit.
Did you ever do this one race which goes like by the golf courses on the coast in California, Palm Springs or something like that?
Or Big Sur, maybe?
Maybe, is it?
I've seen picture of that. That one looks incredible, though. I haven't gotten around it yet, but that'll happen. Yeah.
Great. Well, any last comments? And Reed has to go to a meeting, so we're gonna have to stop here.
I do. Well, I'll be back soon. It's really wonderful to be with you, Elliot. I'm sorry to distract you guys from the CT of the stomach.
Next week.
It'll be really important next week.
I'll be there.
It's great to see you, Elliot.
Same here, Reed.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody. How'd we do? Any good comments? Olaf from